featured presentation today is from Dr. Peter Lehman. I'd like to give Howard the honor of introducing Peter. If Howard, you'd like to take the floor for a moment.
Yes, it's a pleasure really to introduce Peter. He's really had quite a distinguished career. Let me tell you a little bit about it. He's well educated. He got his BS from MIT and then PhD from University of Chicago, and then a postdoc at Berkeley. And it turns out he and I were at Berkeley at the same time in the 60s. So we also got a political education while we were there. He's developed the Energy Resource Program within the Environmental Resources Engineering Department at HSU, where he's also served as department chair. He's the founding faculty advisor for the student-run Campus Center for Appropriate Technology. Everybody who's gone to HSU knows about that organization. For the past 30 years, though, his main energy has been with the Schatz Center, where he's the founding director. And that center was funded originally by our president's grandfather, Louis Schatz. The center's mission is to promote clean and renewable energy. And they've pioneered hydrogen and fuel cell technology development in California and internationally. He's involved more recently in work to integrate renewable energy into the electric power grid and to develop microgrids. And I understand that's what he's going to tell us more about today. And to cap it off, just recently, he was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award by the California Energy Commission for the 2021 Clean Energy Hall of Fame. So it's really an honor for us to give a warm welcome to our speaker, Peter Lehman.
Well, thank you, Howard. Thank you, Ian. And let me begin by saying a couple of things. First of all, Howard already beat me to this, but the reason we're named the Schatz Center is because of Ian's grandfather, who was our first and by far largest benefactor. He gave us over $12 million over the course of his life and in his estate, and we wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be doing the things that we're doing without his vision and without his help. And the second thing I'd like to say is I'd like to make this a conversation. This isn't a lecture. So if you have questions or comments, jump in, please. And hopefully we'll all learn something today. I guess if
Peter, I would like to start that as a conversation with you. You know, I when people ask me about the Schatz Energy Lab, I have to earnestly tell them it's a name only. You know, as I said before the meeting, you know my granddad as well as I did, and you probably don't remember, but that picture of you and your co-inventor at the Schatz Hydrogen Lab up there in Trinidad, that I wouldn't be surprised if that's where I met you, and you wouldn't remember because I was a kid at the time, just wondering what the bubbles in the chamber were. But to this day, that did have an impact on me in that I would love to buy that Toyota Mirai or any other hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, but as you know, of course, right now the fueling network is somewhat limited especially in the northern area here. But I'd love to hear your story about how that started and got you involved and where it is now.
I could tell those stories. In terms of hydrogen fueling, I can tell you that we are in the process of working with the Humboldt Transit Authority to have them switch to zero emission fuel cell buses. And One of the things we need to do in order to do that is to have hydrogen fueling here on the North Coast. And we are looking for funding. We're going to apply to a big state grant coming up right away in the next few months to put in hydrogen fueling here. So once that's here, you can get your Toyota Mirai and drive around. Yeah, fingers crossed that we can make that work. So I'm going to share my screen, and let's see here. Did that work? Share. Okay. All right. Can people see that?
We got you, Peter. Thank you.
All right. So as Howard said, I'm going to talk about the more recent work that we've done at the Schatz Center. So the Schatz Center started when I met Ian's grandfather in 1989. So we've been going this is our 33rd year, and geez, a third of a century. When we started, Ian, when you were there to see the bubbles at the Marine Lab, we were a very small group. We started with myself, my colleague, Charles Chamberlain, who was in that picture that Howard showed, and 3 undergraduate students. That's how we started. And today we are 45 people and 2 new buildings on the HSU campus. The 45 people are professional staff, administrative staff, and students. And we still have, well, now we've expanded to have probably 10 to 12 students, both graduate and undergraduate students who work and study at the center. And it's just been amazing. If someone had told me that this is what was going to happen when we started, I wouldn't have believed them. It's been an amazing story and a great part of my life. So the work that we do in addition to this microgrid work, which I'll get to in a minute, we work on clean transportation. That's how we started, with hydrogen and fuel cells. And as I said, we're working with the Humboldt Transit Authority to transition to zero emission transit here on the North Coast. It's mandated by the state that transit agencies, by the end of this decade, they won't be allowed to buy diesel buses anymore. The buses have either they got to be zero emission. They're either fuel cell electric buses running on hydrogen fuel, or they're battery electric buses. And we're helping the Humboldt Transit Authority make that transition. We do a lot of work internationally. My colleague, Arnie Jacobson, who is now the director of the center, is involved in work sponsored by the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank to provide energy access to many, many people in the world, in Africa and Asia, that don't have access to convenient and reliable electricity. And there's also a big program that Arnie has directed to do quality assurance of solar products. A lot, especially initially, a lot of the solar products that were sold were inferior and kind of spoiled the market for those products. And Arnie and his team have developed these testing protocols to make sure the products are good. And they have been adopted by countries all over the world. And there have been, I don't know what the latest count is, but tens of millions of quality assured products have been sold in the developing world. So we do that kind of research. One of our main focuses has been microgrids. And you might be asking, what is a microgrid? A microgrid is a section of the power grid that can be isolated from the larger grid. And it's that simple. It needs to have inside the microgrid. So there's a big switch that can either be open or closed. If it's open, the microgrid can operate by itself autonomously. And there is energy generation and storage inside the microgrid. So when the larger grid goes down, the microgrid can provide power for as long as it's designed to provide power. And I don't have to tell the people on this call that we are certainly vulnerable here in Humboldt County. We have only 3 major highways. Well, 101 is one highway that goes, and 299 that go in and out of here. And we're vulnerable to tsunamis, earthquakes, landslides, floods, wildfires, and everything these days seems to be getting worse because of climate change. We've also in the past had PSPS events. They are less likely now that the Humboldt Bay Generating Station, the one at south of Eureka, I'm trying to think of the name. What's the city south of Eureka?
King Salmon.
King Salmon.
King Salmon, thank you. The plant there can run the county, most of the county, not all of it, most of the county in the event that PG&E has to shut down the larger grid. So we started with the Blue Lake Rancheria Microgrid, and maybe you've read about this, maybe you haven't. This was our first microgrid project. Actually, there are 2 microgrids at the Blue Lake Rancheria. One runs their main campus, which is the hotel, the casino, and the tribal offices. And the other runs the gas station and convenience store. And this was our first project, and the gas station was our second project. It was funded by the California Energy Commission and the Blue Lake Rancheria. They put in quite a bit of support. It has a 420 kilowatt photovoltaic array and a 1 megawatt battery, 2 megawatt hours. To give you a picture of how big that battery is, it's about as big as the batteries combined in 25 Tesla automobiles. So it's a pretty darn big battery. There's a picture of the array down in the lower right of this slide. It occupies about 2 acres. This system has been running now for 4 years, and it's run extremely well. Typically during what we call blue sky conditions, where the grid is up, which is most of the time 99% plus. What this system does is provide renewable electricity to the rancheria and lower their power costs. They estimate that this saves them close to $200,000 a year in electricity costs. We worked with the Blue Lake Rancheria. They have been wonderful partners, and very closely with PG&E. And the batteries were supplied by Tesla, the solar system by a company called REC Solar, and Siemens provided the controller, the brains of the operation. I'm sure most of you realize that the BLR campus is a Red Cross shelter, and During the PSPS events, it was literally life-saving for a number of North Coast residents because the power was off. They needed electricity for their medical equipment. And what the Rancheria did was open the hotel to a number of people. I think there were 8 people that took advantage of this. And they were able to stay in the hotel, have power to plug in their medical, the medical equipment they needed to stay alive. And it ran really successfully. Many people went there just to charge their phones or to use their computers. The Times Standard used one of the meeting rooms to put out the paper. So it really served the North Coast well during this event when the power went out. And it won't be the last time that the power goes out, obviously. This project has won a number of awards. DistribuTech is the largest utility conference in the country. And we won the Project of the Year award. That was several years ago. Any questions about this? Okay. So the project that we're working on now is the Redwood Coast Airport microgrid. And this is a real precedent-setting project in California. It's the first front of the meter. I'll explain that in a minute. The first front of the meter microgrid in PG&E's service territory. This is really plowing new ground. It's a 2.5 megawatt PV array. So it's 5 times, even more than 5 times bigger than the Blue Lake project. And I don't know how many of you have been out to the airport. You can see the array, which has been up since the summer. It occupies 7 acres. It's huge for Humboldt County, at least. And it has a 9 megawatt hour battery. So that's equivalent to 100 Tesla automobiles. It's truly a big battery. It's a new Tesla battery technology called the Megapacks. There are 3 Megapacks there. And we will be putting it through. We are just commissioning the project right now. It provides critical resilience to the county's commercial airport and the Coast Guard Air Station. So if we have a serious emergency up here, if we have a big earthquake, for example, which we will have someday, the airport and the Coast Guard station will stay up, and the Coast Guard will be able to provide emergency services. Planes will be able to get in and out, and we will be connected with the outside world through this microgrid. It is also funded by a CEC project. We're the ones that wrote the grant for the grant proposal for the Blue Lake project and for this project. And the Redwood Coast Energy Authority, the local community choice aggregator, is they got a $6 million low interest loan from the USDA from their rural utility service, and they are putting in more money than the California Energy Commission. The Redwood Coast Energy Authority supplies almost everyone's electricity. That's who you pay for your power. And they are intent on getting more and more locally generated renewable energy in Humboldt County. So this project is part of that effort to do that. Our partners have been RCA, the Humboldt County that owns the airport. And I'll put in a shout out to Cody Ruggets, who is he's not that new anymore. He's the airport director. He has been a real ally in this project. We had to get through permission from the Federal Aviation Authority to put this project in. That was not easy, and Cody really helped with that. PG&E has been a big partner in this. And when I say this is the first front of the meter microgrid, here's what I mean. When this system is islanded, when it's separated from the larger grid, we will be delivering power using PG&E's distribution line. And this is the first time that any utility in California has allowed a third party to deliver power on their distribution line. And as you can imagine, they are very persnickety about that because they have all these, well, not only do they have a lot of requirements to maintain the voltage and the frequency and the safety and the cybersecurity, but PG&E has not had a great safety record in the last few years. Let's just say that. And they are very careful about who can use their line to deliver power. And Tesla is another partner. Schweitzer Engineering Labs and a couple of other big engineering firms are partners on this. RCA, our local organization, will own the generation and storage, and they will sell the power on blue sky operations normally. They will sell the power on the wholesale market. CAISO is the California Independent System Operator. They're the organization that buys and sells power in California. And as I said, PG&E retains the distribution line and controls the operation when we're islanded. And as I said, we're just getting to the point where we're commissioning the system right now. It'll be in operation in a month or two. And this project has been a model for the state. SB 1339 is a bill that promotes microgrid deployment in California. The reason for that is as climate change gets more and more severe, there is a need to provide power for critical facilities like the fire station, the police station, the emergency operations center, the grocery store, a gas station. All those things need power in an emergency, and a microgrid is a good way to provide that. PG&E, in response to this, this bill that passed and the fact that the Public Utilities Commission is encouraging microgrid development, they started this community microgrid enablement program, and it's based on this project at the airport. It is their first one. And we're working with CAISO. The power from this project will be the first power that the independent system operator has ever sold from a system that's configured the way this one is. And I'm sure all of you know that HSU is about to become a polytechnic state university, which is a wonderful occurrence for our area and for the university. It's going to bring a lot of resources here. It's going to bring a lot of new students. It's going to be a big boon for our area. And part of the money that we got, so the state budget has $458 million allocated to HSU this year for this transition to a polytechnic. And part of that is going to be to build a new microgrid research and instructional facility at HSU. And it will be it'll be part of the Schatz campus on the HSU campus. It'll be just south of our building, which is kind of an open area now. That whole area, I mean, I got to pinch myself. That whole area was kind of a gravel parking lot a few years ago, and now it's going to have 2 Schatz buildings and a third one about to be built. It's amazing. And that ends my my presentation. I'll be happy to talk to you if anyone has questions. But
So much,
thank you
Peter.
very much.
I know I see Howard has his hands up and has a couple of questions for you.
Yes, my first question is, what does the battery look like for the airport microgrid? Is it just a large conventional shape of a battery?
It's a big white box, and it contains many, I don't know how many small lithium-ion batteries. It's a lithium-ion battery, but it's made up of thousands of smaller lithium-ion batteries. But what does it look like? It looks like a big white box. To give you an idea of size, I don't know what it is exactly. I'm doing this from memory. It's about 20 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 10 feet high. So a big metal box is the answer.
My second question is, what's beyond this airport microgrid in terms of size? Will eventually Humboldt County become a microgrid, or how big will you envision these becoming?
Humboldt County is a microgrid because the Humboldt Bay generating station, the one at King Salmon, is 160 megawatts, and it's enough to run the county. And PG&E reconfigure. I don't know if you remember this happening, but a number of people in Humboldt County complained to PG&E during the PSPS events and said, "How come you can't run the generating station?" And the answer is, it's not simple to so-called black start, so-called get the power running if everything is down. That's a whole process that needs to happen. And they did that. PG&E reconfigured the Humboldt Bay generating station so that it can black start and it can run the county during PSPS events. So in recent PSPS events, we have not been blacked out. Most of Humboldt County, people in Hoopa and the further reaches of the county have been blacked out, but most of Humboldt County became a microgrid. It was isolated from the grid. It's interesting here. We're only vaguely connected to the national grid. We have two 70 megawatt lines that run from here to the Central Valley, to Anderson in the Central Valley, and they run over very mountainous terrain, and they fail occasionally. But I mean, we're fortunate here in Humboldt County to have that generating station, which runs on natural gas and diesel in a real emergency, and Ken Island. And so the whole county is a microgrid in a way. But if we had a serious, like a tsunami, they're in the tsunami zone. So that generating station is probably not going to survive a big earthquake and tsunami. And then these smaller microgrids that are distributed around the county would provide the power to critical facilities like the Red Cross shelter at Blue Lake, like the airport.
Thank you, Peter. I like your statement of vaguely connected to the rest of the grid. That's what it feels like up here. And we're so glad that you are leading the Energy Lab and helping us become more resilient. And, when you mentioned the station down at the bottom of the hill where I live here at Humboldt Bay, it is great to be isolated and islandable, but it is still a natural gas diesel. And, these creations of the smaller and to some extent larger microgrid stations that are renewable from the start are fantastic to see. I think that's a huge asset to our area and to the people here. I see your hand up, Jeff.
Yeah, this question was for Peter. I was just wondering what the size of a grid or alternative power sources would be to power a city the size of Arcata.
Say that again. Do you mean how much power does Arcata use, or?
Yeah, how much power and what would a microgrid look like to power like something the size of Arcata? Just a quick.
Well,
You can get back to me later.
I don't know what the breakdown for Arcata is specifically. Humboldt County as a whole has an average load of about 110 megawatts. So, and I'll remind you, the generating station is 160 maximum. The maximum load here, the peak load, is more like 170 megawatts. So we need to import some power from the national grid. I don't know what Arcata's share of that is. I would guess it's probably a quarter or a third of the total, so probably 25 or 30 megawatts. I don't know for sure. In terms of providing that power with a solar array, that's a different story. There probably isn't enough room in Humboldt County to provide enough solar power for the whole county. I mean, we got to grow food. We got to have pastures for dairy cows and beef cows and et cetera, et cetera. So we really don't have enough flat land here in Humboldt County to provide all our power from solar. Now, if the onshore wind project had happened, that would have provided a huge fraction of our power. It didn't happen for various reasons. People are talking now about developing offshore wind, which would be 20 to 30 miles off the coast here. We have an enormous wind resource off our coast. It's the largest wind resource in the continental US, is right off the Humboldt County coast here. But developing it in that deep water, in that deep ocean water, is going to be difficult. It could be a huge economic engine for Humboldt County if it comes true. And it looks like it's starting to come true, but that's going to be at least, I would say, 10 years down the road before we develop that resource. But if that resource gets developed, there's way more than enough power to power Humboldt County renewably. So, the answer is solar. We can't do it just with solar here in Humboldt County. Of course, we can import solar power from the Mojave Desert or Arizona or Nevada, and that works just fine. And there's plenty of room there to do what we need with solar. But here on the North Coast, if we're going to provide all our energy renewably, it would be through wind power. I don't know if I answered your question, but that I rambled around it pretty well.
Well, Peter, you did a great job, so I appreciate it and thank you. Yeah, the question is that I thought I kind of knew that solar would take up too much space, so there would also have to be alternative forms of renewable energy. So thank you.
Yeah, there have been a couple of articles in the paper, more than a couple, touting the idea of having rooftop solar in Humboldt County as an answer to our energy problems. And rooftop solar is great. I have a solar system on my roof that I've had for many, many years. But we just can't do it with rooftop solar. I mean, if you do the math, you figure out very quickly that there's not enough room to do enough solar to provide all the energy we need in Humboldt County. And let me point out, we're going to need more and more. People are going to have electric cars. I mean, I already have one, and more people are going to have electric cars. And the more and more people are going to switch to electric heating because we got to stop using fossil fuels. And people will use heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, heat pump space heaters, and that will increase our electric load. So as time goes on and we get greener and greener, we're going to have a bigger and bigger electric load. And we're going to have to get that renewably from somewhere.
Peter, thank you so much for speaking today. I know that everybody here could talk for hours or listen for hours. You've got so much to say that's so important. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning. In recognition of you being here, we would like to make a donation to the Wheelchair Foundation in your name. The Wheelchair Foundation provides accessibility for people who cannot otherwise afford it. So we appreciate you coming to speak today. And in what I started as my own tradition in our club, I do write a haiku to kind of capture my thoughts at the end of each meeting. So today's daily thoughts are really for you, and in particular for hydrogen, and that is: conserve energy, convert to storable form, save for future use. Everybody think about that in your energy use each day. What do you really need to use, and what could you put aside for tomorrow? Thank you, Peter, and everybody for joining us this morning. Really appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.